Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Man, do we have an absolutely wild story lined up for you today. We're going to unpack the incredibly dramatic saga of Schalke 04. I mean, we're talking about a club that went from being literal European football royalty right down to fighting for its very survival. It's a roller coaster of massive success, some shockingly poor decisions, and a really grueling road back.
So the big question is, how exactly does a German giant collapse from playing in the 2011 Champions League semifinals to ending up in the second division crushed under a mountain of debt? Seriously, how does that happen? Let's dive right into this mystery.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, an unthinkable football collapse.
To really wrap our heads around the sheer scale of this tragedy, we first need to look back at the incredible heights they reached just a little over a decade ago. It really puts the whole disaster into perspective, you know? Back in 2011, under coach Ralf Rangnick, Schalke absolutely shocked the football world. They eliminated the defending champions, Inter Milan. They were a total powerhouse. Their squad featured global superstars like Raúl and Klaas-Jan Huntelaar, and they were playing out of the world-class Veltins Arena, a stadium that was supposed to take them to that next financial level. At the time, it seemed like they had permanently cemented their place among Europe's absolute elite.
Let's look at where that DNA comes from in Section 2, Coal Mines to Europe's Elite.
To grasp what was really lost here, we have to travel way back to 1904. We're talking about Gelsenkirchen, right in the industrial, coal-mining heart of Germany's Ruhr region. Founded by actual miners and steel workers who spent their days grinding it out underground in incredibly tough conditions, Schalke built this unbreakable working-class identity. While other clubs kind of represented wealth, Schalke, they represented hard work. They represented unity, and over the decades, that working-class grit was marked by some incredible pioneering highs on the pitch.
Their early domestic dominance was defined by something called the Schalke Kreisel, or the Schalke spinning top. Now picture this. While most teams in the 1930s were just booting long balls down the field and hoping for the best, Schalke used this rapid, quick-passing game with constant movement. It was literally decades ahead of its time. Opponents just couldn't handle it. This beautiful, fluid style secured them 6 league titles between 1934 and 1942. Fast forward a few decades, and they proved that same working-class grit all over again. The legendary 1997 squad, known forever as the Eurofighters, defied all the odds. They went up against a heavily favored, star-studded Inter Milan in the UEFA Cup final, and after 2 fierce, grinding matches, Schalke took it home on penalties. To this day, it remains one of the absolute proudest moments in their history.
Which brings us to the turning point, Section 3, the Financial House of Cards.
Okay, so after establishing themselves as a true European force, armed with a state-of-the-art stadium and a top-tier academy, how did things go so wrong? Well, it all started with one fatal assumption. The board made a massive miscalculation. They basically assumed that qualifying for the super lucrative Champions League was just a given, every single year. Because they firmly believed they permanently belonged among Europe's elite, they started making some increasingly risky and highly expensive financial decisions.
And the cracks really started showing with their homegrown talent. Look, Schalke had one of the finest academies in all of Germany, pumping out absolute superstars, but they constantly sold off those homegrown players. We're talking guys like Manuel Neuer, Mesut Ozil, Julian Draxler, and Leroy Sané. And yes, sure, it generated massive income in the short term, but the result for the club was always the exact same. They just kept gutting the core of their team.
Which leads us directly to their incredibly flawed transfer strategy. Instead of taking all that transfer money and patiently rebuilding their core, the club completely squandered it. They bought expensive, immediate replacements to try and keep up those Champions League appearances. But the reality? Those transfers largely failed, and it drove their wage bill up to absolutely unsustainable heights. It was a classic trap.
And this financial mismanagement, it was compounded by severe institutional instability. They were constantly firing managers, and you know what that means. Constantly shifting football philosophies. One coach wants to play one way, the next guy comes in and wants something completely different, which leaves you with a totally unbalanced squad. On top of that, they were way too reliant on their powerful chairman, Clemens Tonius. So when controversies eventually forced him to step down, it left a catastrophic leadership vacuum that the club was totally unprepared to fill.
And now we hit the darkest chapter, Section 4, Rock Bottom and Relegation.
Already teetering on the edge, a global crisis arrived in 2020. The COVID-19 pandemic created the ultimate perfect storm. You see, Schalke relied incredibly heavily on matchday revenue from the massive Veltins Arena, ticket sales, hospitality, merchandise, the whole shebang. So when the pandemic forced stadiums to close, millions in income literally vanished overnight. But that enormous player wage bill? Yeah, that stayed right where it was. As a result, the debt just spiraled completely out of control.
Out on the pitch, the pressure was just too much. The team mentally broke. During the devastating 2020 to 2021 Bundesliga season, Schalke suffered a humiliating 16-game losing streak. 16 games! They went months without winning a single match, cycling through managers multiple times as whatever confidence they had left completely drained away. And then, the unimaginable actually happened. Schalke was officially relegated to the second division. They suffered a massive drop in TV and sponsorship revenue and were left burdened with over 180 million euros in crushing debt. Let that sink in. 180 million.
But the story isn't over. Let's look at Section 5, Rebuilding a Sustainable Future.
Let's jump to the present day. So after bouncing straight back up to the Bundesliga, only to be painfully relegated again a year later, the club finally woke up. They realized the era of quick fixes was dead. They've completely abandoned their old model built on expensive players and fast growth. Instead, they've made a hard pivot. Now it's all about strict financial discipline, investing in data-driven scouting, significantly slashing wages, and once again, actually trusting their famous academy to deliver sustainable growth. The road to recovery is clear, but it's long. Today, the entire focus is on gradual debt reduction and just running an efficient organization. They are heavily leveraging the Veltins Arena for non-football events. Think massive concerts, just to generate some extra income. And most importantly, their initial goal is humble and realistic, just achieving permanent Bundesliga stability. They aren't talking about challenging Bayern Munich right now or getting back into Europe. They just want to build a healthy club first.
But guys, you have to consider this staggering number, 60,000. Despite back-to-back disasters, relegations, and massive financial crises, over 60,000 loyal supporters still sell out the stadium in the second division every single week. While other clubs lose thousands of fans after relegation, Schalke's fans, they show up.
This quote really captures it perfectly. This unwavering loyalty proves that Schalke is far more than just a business. It's the resilient heartbeat of an entire German region. It's a true brotherhood of fans whose loyalty is something money simply cannot buy. And that gives the club an incredibly solid foundation to build upon.
Which leaves us with a fascinating final thought to take away from this explainer. In an era of modern football that is absolutely dominated by billionaires and massive global media rights, is the unyielding loyalty of a working-class fan base enough to bring a fallen giant back to the top? Honestly, it's going to be an incredible journey to watch unfold. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.